Greetings, people of the degenerate persuasion. Welcome back to another episode of Bet Like No One's Watching. I'm John Sullivan, and let's get into another rambling session today. I wanted to get some fresh content out to you, so still no intro yet to the return of this podcast, but we're working on things behind the scenes, so just bear with me. Before I get started, I want to take a second to just reiterate how just difficult it was for me to get back on the podcasting horse. After all I've been through this year, I do feel a lot more comfortable after getting another episode recorded. And I'm going to ramp things up, and I'll talk more about my plans at the end of the episode today, but let's start with betting stuff, which is why you're all here pretty much. It's a great day for sports ball. We've got NBA Finals, NHL Western Conference Game 2. We got the French Open semifinals. We've got baseball in full swing, Aussie Rules in full swing, and a week from today is the start of the CFL season. And also, I'm going to take a minute to talk about the really juicy College World Series market opened up this week, and we'll get to that. But wasn't something I was seeing myself wagering on, but here we are. So let's take them one by one. I'm going to start with the NBA futures. My futures are clinched. But as far as the finals go, I think it's the Warriors series to lose. I know a lot of people are very, I don't know how to say it, dedicated or argumentative about which side they like. I think it's the Warriors series to lose. I think they're just deeper and more experienced. They're healthier. They're getting some of their depth back for the finals. They have a really amazing coach that learned obviously under Phil Jackson and also Pop, and I just feel like the finals are going to be a learning experience for the Celtics. They are definitely the best team in the East. They earned that right. Anything can happen in a short series. I will say I have money on Golden State in Game 1, so we'll see what happens, but I thought that I got him at like 155 or something like that. That was felt like that was a super short price for a home favorite. But I was all over that. Let's go to hockey now. This Western Conference final Game 1 was insane. It was cray-cray. I did not expect 14 goals. I expected a lot of goals. I expected over 6.5. Did not expect 14 goals. Even if you took away that offsides goal that shouldn't have counted, and then the ensuing power play, which resulted in a goal, because those would have both been wiped out, that's still 12 goals. That's insane. The goaltending options range in this series from meh to oh no. I mean, they're bad. Kemper is out. Let's talk about Edmonton first. Mike Smith, he does have his moments when he is very good, but I think it's a tall task to ask him to steal 4 games. If you followed the playoffs when they were playing Calgary, Connor McDavid in a post-game press conference where the Oilers lost 5-4 said 4 goals should be enough for us to win. And I think he should realize now that that is not going to be the case here. They don't have a lot of great goaltending options. And I said in the last episode, the Eastern teams have the goaltending, and that's really what matters in the playoffs. And it's very unlikely that an offensive powerhouse can sustain long enough to win a 7-game series. And Koskinen is a backup that is a worse option than Mike Smith. Mike Smith is 40 years old, and no knock against him. He is a quality goalie, but at 40 years old, your reflexes are just not what they used to be. If you give 2 people with equal mental capacity one is 25 and one is 40, and you give them a video game where hand-eye coordination is a key skill to winning that video game, the person that is 25 will eventually always take over that situation, just because your body has better coordination at that age. So not knocking Mike Smith at all. He's a good hockey goalie, but the goals he gives up are the kind of goals, if you noticed in the last game, they went right through him. They were not rebound goals. They were goals that missed his pads. Some of those goals were just really great offensive plays, but some of them were bad softies, and he's always had a reputation for giving up softies. Where Koskinen is just a huge guy. He's like 6'6", and he will make that initial stop, but he has no rebound control. He gives up rebounds, and he also gets out of position side to side. So if you can get him to go left to right and then try to make him have to go back left or vice versa, he's usually out of position and there's a wide open net. There was a goal like that in game one, and this does not bode well for the total. I'm super shocked that the total is 7.5. Before we get to the betting, let's talk about Colorado's goalies. Kemper is out. I think that it may have had a concussion in game one, and it was not picked up by concussion protocol, but somebody on the ice was like, hey, he's not right, and they took him out of the game. And they say he has an upper body injury, so either it's like a broken collarbone or something that nobody knows about, or he may have had a concussion or something affecting his eyesight or his hand-eye coordination, because playoff teams get very, very hush-hush about injuries during the playoffs. He has an upper body injury. He has a lower body injury. That's all we know. And then you have Francois, if I pronounced that right, I probably butchered it, as the backup goalie. He is, I think, the better goalie of all the remaining goalies. But I think that him goaltending for the rest of the series makes this series way more even than it would have been originally. I probably would have priced it at -150 for Colorado, and now I think it's more like a -130 for Colorado to win the series. I would not be surprised to see Edmonton split here with the goaltending issues the way they are. There could be one or two more major injuries that affect the outcome of the playoffs. It happens every time this year. It happens every year. I think this really evens the series. So if you find a good price on the Oilers, I might jump on it. So anyway, tonight, as I record this, the total opened at 7.5, and the game one opened at 6.5, and it was +110 to 7.5, and I'm like, well, that's crazy. That's not going to stay. And as I record this, it's still 7.5, and it actually, at one of the books, it was +120, and so I doubled down on the over for tonight's game too. I could be totally wrong here, and I could lose both of my bets, but there's very little indication that the defenses and the goaltending are going to improve, and if there are a lot of power plays, there's going to be a lot of scoring. So I expect, great offense, bad defense, and awful goaltending. So I'm riding the over here, and I figure the books are going to lose a bunch if this trend continues. We'll see what happens. But I'm very excited about the hockey. I may watch the hockey over the basketball, even though I have way more money involved in the basketball. Moving on to the College World Series. I bet some College World Series futures this week. I went a little crazy. I bet 14 teams total. There's 64 teams in the tournament, 12 of which can advance to the final 16. So there's 16 four-team regionals in the first round, double elimination. And I just started looking at the odds, and did some odd shopping. Insane value in this market, mostly because University of Tennessee is very heavily favored this year. I think they're like 255 or 350 plus 350, something like that, to win the whole thing. But there's some other really good teams with some crazy good odds. I just, off the top of my head, I have Texas at 30-1. That was the very first wager I made. I saw that and I was like, I got to get on this. Virginia Tech at 25-1, LSU 35-1, Virginia 60-1. There's a bunch of others. I bet a few long shots that were hosting regionals. And a few teams, I looked over several power ratings that I found online and kind of just did a little aggregate to see which teams were considered to be, the better, stronger teams rankings-wise. And I really think, like, as far as not necessarily the individual games, but as a futures market, I think this is a great market to bet because it's such a short turnaround. I mean, the entire College World Series is maybe a month. I mean, you go from the 16 regionals, and then you go down to 16 teams that play best of 3 to go to the final 8 College World Series, and then you just work it down to 2, and I think it's double elimination in the College World Series down to the last 2, and then they play a championship game. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. So I think with the odds the way, I did see somebody on Twitter today talk about FanDuel pulled down their College World Series odds because people were slamming them because the numbers were so soft. And I did probably place 2/3 of my World Series futures on FanDuel. I use Caesars and Bet Rivers as well, but I just, whenever there's an event coming up, whether it's a tennis tournament or a car race or a league, I'm always looking at the futures market because I said last episode, this is where the value is. This is where easy value is, and the bookmakers do not spend a lot of time handicapping the futures market, and they just try to cover it up with higher hold percentage, but that leaves good value for you to pick off from time to time. So let's talk MLB. We're about 1/3 in on the MLB season, and I've actually been betting baseball. I'm betting an angle on baseball that was kind of just doing it to goof around, and I think it's time to share it now because it's worked pretty well. It's not, I don't know if it's going to continue, but up to now it's been doing very well for me. So in my opinion, the theory behind betting a mature market like Major League Baseball, I call it a mature market because it's been around for a long time. And, some people might even say baseball's been solved. It's a market that has tons of data analytics behind it, probably more than any other. So in those markets, the value is found early on in the season, the first third of the season. You'll even hear people like Rufus say that they won't bet MLB after the All-Star break because they feel like the edge is gone, the bookmakers have caught up, their models adjust. Well, going into this year, I said to myself, there's a major rule change this year with the DH in the National League, so there's DH in every game now. And there were recent changes last year with pitch clocks and minimum number of batters, like pitching change rules and the number of batters that each pitcher has to face and things like that. And some of those rules are designed to speed up the game, but other rules, most of the rules are really designed to push scoring higher, and that's their intent. And I just expected that some of the books might not factor this in early on. Usually it should be baked into the line, especially at the closing line. But I just felt like the NL, especially the National League totals, would be probably behind at the beginning of the season on factoring in all of these changes. And so I for a few weeks I handicapped these totals, and it seemed like I was doing pretty well. So the last week of April I started wagering, again, not life-changing amounts here, but on overs. I would handicap the daily card and choose the one game I thought was the most likely to go over. And I always play the half a run. I never play a flat 8 or a flat 7 or a flat 9 or whatever. It's always 8.5, 7.5, 6.5. So it's which game do I think is the most likely to go over. And handicapping, without getting into the weeds on, either doing a spreadsheet or whatever, if you were just cursory handicapping, like you're on vacation in Vegas and you only had your smartphone on you, the things I would look for would be having a top 10, like a team would be ranked in the top 10 on offense in OPS or runs created, and they would be in the bottom 10 of things like WHIP or ERA, or especially fielding. Fielding, I think, is one thing that people do not handicap in totals, because you could have Scherzer or DeGrom on the mound, but if your team is giving up errors and allowing extra base runners, it's going to cost you. So anyway, I've been, since the last week of April, I've been betting basically one major league game a day, betting an over every day, and I think I'm 21-11 is my total right now. Depending on today's game, I might go to 22. I know that's silly, but I do hope it makes me look square to the book. I'm always betting the over. They may think I'm a dumbass. I did the majority of those games. I would say at least 2/3 to 3/4 of those games, if not more, were National League games. A lot of Pittsburgh Pirate games, a lot of Colorado Rocky games, a lot of Cincinnati Red games, Diamondback games, Washington Nationals games. It depends who their opponent was and who the starting pitchers were, but these are the types of, it was just going through each day's card and saying, okay, well, this line looks, is a run below each team's average runs in a game. So it's not rocket science. It's just doing comparative handicapping. And I will say I've been betting mostly overnight lines, not laying any heavy amounts. I'm certainly not moving any markets. But it's fun, and it keeps me interested in baseball. It keeps me looking at the scores every day. I don't know how long this will last. If I start losing a bunch in a row, I'm probably just going to drop it and move on to something else, because but I feel like people have been talking, like in the American League, I think there's been a lot more unders than people expected, but in the National League, there's been a lot of overs. And I see that continuing with the DH. I think, not only do I not think bookmakers adjusted early in the season, but I don't think that some of the teams really adjusted to full-time DH. I mean, obviously, it's just adding a hitter to your lineup if you think that, but strategy in the game is very, very nuanced, switching to an American League style management style from a National League style. So I'm not sure all the managers were clearly ready to adapt. Interesting thing how, like, we're in a new century of baseball, and it was basically 100 years ago we went from the dead ball era in Major League Baseball to the live ball era in 1920. So now it's 2022, and we're in this new era where they're going to outlaw shifts, and everybody wants walks and home runs and strikeouts. They don't really want any other outcomes, which is very strange. But it's interesting times. So let's talk football for a little bit. Moving on to football, CFL starts in 7 days, I actually think, if you want to talk about futures, that this is the easiest futures market to handicap. There are only 9 teams in the Canadian Football League, and 6 of them make the playoffs. So there's 4 teams in the East, there's 5 teams in the West, and 2 of the 4 teams in the East are guaranteed to make the playoffs. So last year was strange. It was a survival year. They had a canceled season with COVID, and if they didn't play last year, they were probably going to fold for good. The league was defense dominated last year, was very, very defensive oriented. I was very surprised how low the scoring was. Even the kicking was bad last year, worse than usual. This season is hopefully back to high scoring fun. lots of parity, which is what I always liked about the CFL. A team could go out up by 25 points and the game would not be over. In pretty much any, except for a few college sports, few college football conferences, that doesn't really happen very often. So in the CFL, a new collective bargaining agreement's been signed. That's good for the financial stability and the future of the league. And as far as this year goes, I have confidence in certain teams to rebuild, certain teams that have good GMs and good coaches, but they might have not had the personnel. Teams I'm targeting in particular are BC Lions, Montreal Alouettes, and the Ottawa Red Blacks. I think Rick Campbell at NBC is a good fit. Kari Jones in Montreal. And Ottawa has just been really short of, they have a really good organization there, but they've just been short on talent. All those teams should make improvements over last year, and it really won't take a whole lot of improvement. If you can improve 2 or 3 games, that, especially for the East teams, that will put you in the playoffs. I think 9-7, 8-8 made the playoffs last year in the East. So that's all it takes, really. So if there's 9 teams, so you figure a team with an average chance to win it all is 9-1 or plus 900. If you're getting 15-1 on one of these teams, it's worth it to take a flyer. It's not going to take a lot of money to get a nice payday out of that. And there might be a team that starts 0-2 or 0-3, and they could turn it around. And they at the 0-3 in the season, they might end up being 20-1 to win the Grey Cup, but that might be a good bet. And really, there's real value there. I think that's a good practice market if you're interested in betting futures and getting more into futures. I think that's a great practice market because there's only a few options, so you can't make a lot of bets. You're obviously not going to bet all 9 teams to win the Grey Cup, but you're going to pick 2, 3, or 4, and you're going to say these are the people I'm riding this year. And then, if one of your teams gets to the finals, you might be able to hedge for a profit or just have some good action on the game. So we'll see what happens. But I do enjoy the league when it's running good and when the offense is flowing. It's really exciting football. I'm going to actually spend the most time talking about Aussie Rules today. I am fascinated, just like I am fascinated with the Juggalo culture, I am also fascinated with Aussie Rules football. It is just rough and tumble, no pads. It's not rugby, but it's not football, it's not soccer. It's some kind of mishmash of all that. And it is fun to watch for me. The problem is the games are on during insomniac hours, and you can't legally stream the games, live stream them without buying a package directly from the league, which is super expensive. You can get free radio feeds of all the games, and the apps do a really good job of keeping you up to the minute on scores and action and play-by-play and all that stuff. But even if you're not really a fan of the sport, why would I talk about betting on Aussie Rules and why you might want to do that? Well, let me cut to the chase here. Aussie Rules is the easiest sport to bet on right now. And he asked me, why, John? Why is it so easy to bet on? Because someone out there has done all the modeling for you. It ain't me, that's for sure. There's a fella on Twitter. His name is Max Barry, Barry. And I think his Twitter handle is squiggle AFL. So you can look him up. I'm sure if you search Max Barry, he will come up. But what he has done is he's taken 20 different models, 20 good, decent models on AFL football, and aggregated them all in one place. And you can go to his website, and you'll have up-to-the-minute projections on every AFL game for this week. The numbers will update automatically for injuries and substitutions and the suspensions, and if any model has an update, it automatically gets like an RSS feed, gets pumped right into his website. And he has a great visualization chart so you can see it. So this is like premium Ken Pom for Aussie Rules, but it's all free. It's just amazing. I wish that could you imagine if like he pulled, Rob Pizzola's NHL model and Rufus's golf model, and he had like 20 golf models to aggregate and 20 NHL models to aggregate, and we had a live ticking feed of all these models to bet with. It would be amazing. So each game, each team's probability of winning the game, and the projected spread of each game. So projected margin of victory. So what the model says the spread should be. So all you need to do, for those of you that are not math experts and want to bet on a game, and you have the data but you don't know what to do with it, just go to a Kelly calculator and type in the percentage of the team winning and the odds at the sports book for that bet, and it'll tell you what percentage of your bankroll you should bet on that game. Now, you don't want to use a full Kelly, but if it gives you a 0, that means don't bet on the game. But if it gives you a number like 5%, that means that's a positive EV, should be a positive EV bet, and you should bet on the game. It doesn't necessarily mean you should bet 5% of everything you own. It just means, that's a bet worth pursuing. And of course, this is for money line bets only. We're not talking spreads. So if you just do that, you can take these numbers that all of these people put all this hard work in for you for free and wager on a game that you'll probably never watch and will happen while you're sleeping. Now, if you wanted to bet the spreads, and I have to tell you that Aussie Rules scoring the variance is super high. A team can win by 2 points, 20 points, 50 points. I've seen teams win by 100. So the spreads can be, a team could be favored by 20 and they could win by 50. A team could be favored by 70 and win by 10. But in my opinion, this is not tried and true anything. You would need at least 7 points off what the line is at the book. So, for example, if my model says Sydney is projected to win by 7, if Sydney is projected to win by 14, then if I went to the book and Sydney was -7, that would give me a 7-point cushion. So I would take that. So if they said Fremantle is going to lose by 20, and I can get Fremantle plus 27, then that's the 7-point cushion I would need to make a side wager. So I would be looking for at least 7 points in your favor to take advantage of a side. I really don't know what to tell you about the totals. I do know I bet on a couple of Aussie Rule games this year, and the weather was very rainy, and that really does affect the scoring. So I would keep that in mind if you're betting a total, but you're really a degen if you're betting a total on a game that you can't watch live. And some of these guys kick horribly, but if you ran, some of these guys run like 20 kilometers around the field during the 60 minutes of a Aussie Rules game, and they run all over the field, and then they have to stop and kick an attempt on the goal, and you're breathing heavy, and it's hard. But it does. Those of us in America are spoiled by our place kickers who can hit these 65-yard field goals like it's nobody's business. But if you try to do it, when you're out of breath, it's a totally different thing. So I really think Aussie Rules is fun, and as far as I know, in New York, they have it on DraftKings and Caesars, and since I'm not allowed on DraftKings, I can only bet on it on Caesars, but I usually throw one game a week down, and I've done pretty well. So as far as the betting this week, there's a few useful gambling tips I tried to cough up for you. I hope that was helpful. So stop worrying about the golf hedges and hedging your golf bets, and go bet some footy, have some fun. So I want to finish up today talking about podcasting and my future in content creation. So I reflected on my last episode, and I talked about the altruism and monetizing your content and cash grabs and stuff like that. And so I said, how would I actually apply this to myself? So I've been podcasting for over 6 years now, and I have received very little compensation from my podcasting. I've never asked for a like, a comment, a subscription, a payment, or a donation. I've never tried to monetize any of my podcasts. In any podcast that I had editorial control over, I always got to approve the advertisers. There were 1 or 2 podcasts I did where there were ad reads that I didn't approve of, but I was not given the option to say, I don't like this and I don't want it here. And those relationships ended very quickly. So anyway, my point here is, how would I monetize my content? In other words, how would I do things the right way, as opposed to, what some of these other people are doing? And the answer starts with selling picks or projections is not the right answer. I won't go into the scumminess of being a tout or not being a tout, but I will say from a psychological standpoint, I think any potential customer you have needs tangible value. So selling the dream of profitability is not the answer. It's not going to leave everybody feeling good. People listen to your content for 2 reasons, basically one of 2 reasons, or both: entertainment or listening to your podcast as a resource. And side note, hate listening is entertainment. So if you hate listening to me, or if I hate listening to you, we're just doing it because we get off on it for some strange reason. Anywho, any commerce that you conduct with your audience, it should be transactional. Having a physical, if somebody has a physical item related to your niche, develops a community bond. In other words, merch is probably really the answer. I think that's how I would roll in this situation. By the way, did you know that Rufus said on his last episode that he spent over $20,000 producing Bet the Process? I'm not saying that my podcast is better quality-wise, but I'm a dude in a 1-bedroom apartment with a 10-year-old computer, and I just mashed some buttons, and this is what we got. And I don't think the sound is really any worse. So take that for what it's worth. And I doubt, if we're going back to the issue of monetizing his content, I doubt he would ever recover that amount, that $20K, selling, dog name t-shirts. Did he ever intend to monetize his podcast or monetize his brand? It seems like Jeff and Rufus are just too wealthy to worry about stuff like that. Like, he shouldn't, it's one thing that he can afford to spend $20K to produce his podcast, but the other thing is, if he wasn't intending to monetize it, he shouldn't complain about it. That's how I feel. Not that I'm picking on you, Rufus. I like your podcast very much, and I listen to it. So where does this all leave me? As for me, I've been emboldened by my recent experience of, being out of work and because of my injuries to create more content, because it's something I can do and it's something I enjoy. And I feel like I do provide value. I don't know about the entertainment. Maybe I do. I don't know. You're going to get a lot more of this podcast, that's for sure. Eventually, the return of my Sportsbook Confidential live stream. And I'm actually going to launch a third endeavor, which is a 3-minute video series handicapping sporting events. Title yet to be determined, but I'm going to try to record some experimental episodes this week. We do have video podcasts now allowed on Spotify. So, wherever you hear this podcast, you should also be able to hear it on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. With all of these podcasts happening, all this content I'm planning on creating, I do plan to monetize this content. I'm going to develop a merchandise company, and it's going to be very niche. I've had a business plan in place for a while. Can't really talk about it a whole lot at the moment, but the goal is that if I can make enough from the merchandise company, I will be able to continue making content full time, and B, I can use extra money from that to actually sponsor content that I like and advertise on other podcasts. That's a direct goal for me, is to try and grow sales into something that I can, spread the love, so to speak. It's not altruistic because I need to make money for myself to continue to do this and not have to go hump another shitty job. But this is, I think it's a win-win-win if it works out. It could fizzle out, and you can do the Nelson ha-ha from The Simpsons. So we'll see how it goes. But that's the plan, and I'm going to give it a whirl if I'm physically able, and we'll see how it all pans out. More details soon. So that's it for this episode. I want to thank you for spending your time with me, you guys. You've been really great supporting me through all of this. I appreciate it, and we'll see you soon with another episode, hopefully in or around Value Town. So till next time, take care.